In this tutorial, we want to talk about how to solve a word problem and show all of our work. I will go through why each step is required and how to solve the problem. A problem here is if the bus stop is 0.68 kilometers down the street from the museum, and it takes you 9.5 minutes to walk north from the bus stop to the museum entrance, what is your average velocity in meters per second? So of course the first thing we do is read the prompt, and then we write down what we know, our givens. It might seem pretty basic at first, but as we go along, sometimes the givens are difficult because it will say things like, comes to a stop, starts from rest, or something is dropped. In that case, we know that the speed is 0 in this circumstance. In this case, though, it tells us 0.68 kilometers, but doesn't tell us what that 0.68 kilometers is representing. So what we want to do is look at the units. The units always give away what it is. In this case, kilometers represents distance. But because it gives us a direction of north, we know that it is a displacement instead. It also tells us 9.5 minutes. And that is our time. Minutes is always a unit of time. We need to find here, that's the next step, tell us what we need to find. What is your average velocity in meters per second? So we're looking for a velocity. We've got to be careful. We want units of meters per second. It actually specifies the units. If it doesn't specify, we could keep things in kilometers and minutes. But since it does, we've got to make this conversion from 0.68 kilometers to 680 minutes. I'm sorry, 680 meters. And because it specifies seconds, we have to change 9.5 minutes to 570 seconds. Now again, it might seem pretty basic, writing down what we need to find, but often the case in this class, we're going to have to find a few things before we get our final answer. So we want to always stay focused on what our main objective is. Now the equation. The equation, when we're looking for equation, of course it has to have the v in it. But the only other things it could have is delta x and delta t. So looking at our equation sheet, we see the first one has v in it, and it also has delta x and delta t. You see in your equation sheet that there's many equations, so the equation part is sometimes the most difficult of all. Then I want to see what you're writing into this equation. So I want to actually see your substitutions, what you're putting into your calculator. Our variable is v, so that's not going to have a number. However, we know delta x is 680 meters. And so we replace that in our equation. We know the time is 570 seconds. So we replace that in our equation. So sometimes we're given multiple distances and multiple times, and I want to see which one it is that you're using, see if you're using the correct one. Our final answer is the last step, so of course we're going to write down the answer. 680 divided by 570 is 1.19. We want to include units. So if I say that the speed is 1.19, you don't know if that's fast or slow. If I say meters per second, you know it's a relatively slow speed, but it is a person walking. And then in this case, since it asks for a velocity, we need a direction as well. Final step, I always like to put a box or a circle around the answer so it's more obvious